Hello. How is everybody doing? This is Friday night. It is March 21st. It is spring. The 2025 legislative session is in the home stretch. When they first started the session almost 3 months ago, back in January, today was actually their target date for getting done. But they never actually get done on their target date. And it looks like they have about maybe 2.5 more weeks left to get everything done that they planned. So my name is Brian Almon with the Gem State Chronicle. That's my platform over there that you can find news and analysis to help you be a more engaged citizen of our republic, both at the national level and the state level. I focus on state level politics and local politics because that's where you have the most bang for your buck. There's not much you or I can do about what's going on at the national scene. We can write letters to our senators, but that's about it. However, at the local level, you have the ability to make a difference, and I want to help you make that difference. So let me open up the webpage here, show you a few of the things I'm working on. I've got a few more advertisers, thankfully, coming on board here, and I'll have those up very soon. I'll work on that over the weekend. I put up a couple new things here on the website here. Let's put me down here at the bottom. There we go. Much better. So the graphics aren't quite right here. It cuts them off a little bit, and on mobile, it doesn't really look good, but I'm still working on that, on the actual placement of the links. But as you know, Idaho Insider is your source for information about your government. The executive branch has the 7 elected folks, and I'm still working on that one. I've been focusing on the legislature because that is what is in session. So this has a profile for every one of the 105 representatives in Idaho. Let's take Representative Dale Hawkins here. District 2, Seat B, bio, articles where I've written on him. I mentioned him in today's article. We'll get to that shortly. Scorecards, links, committees, how long he's been there, map of the district. So it's a great resource. I hope you take advantage of it. The other one I just put up is called the legislative live stream. So Idaho Public Television streams the House floor, the Senate floor, and all the committee hearing rooms. And so I just grabbed those streams and put them all together on one page. So you can come see the House when it's in session, the Senate. Click here to see their reading calendars to see what they're actually going to be doing. This is March 24th, so this is next Monday. Second reading calendar, that means they are going to just essentially read the name and title, though at the end of the session, as they've been doing, sometimes they'll suspend the rules and pull it from the second reading calendar and put it up for a vote. So you got to be on your toes. Third reading means it's ready for a vote. According to Idaho law, Idaho Constitution, every bill has to be read 3 times. The first time is before it gets assigned to a committee, after it's been printed. And then it goes to a committee, and if it survives the committee and goes back to the floor, then it's read for the second time, and then the next day after that, it's on third reading, at which point you have a vote. See all these that are appropriations, finance. Those are the budget bills, and that's what they have to do before the session is over. So that's their third reading. General orders are ones that they are preparing to amend. So anyway, that's the reading calendar, and you can click on those. Obviously, they're not in session right now, so nothing's going to happen. It's off. But during the session, turn it on, and sometimes it'll even have a little screensaver that Idaho Public Television puts up telling you when they're coming back. And then we've got all the committee rooms on the House side on the left column and the Senate side on the right. That matches the legislative branch on Idaho Insider, by the way, with the House on the right, left side, Senate on the right, just for consistency. You notice that some of these rooms have multiple committees. Sometimes they have a morning committee and an afternoon committee that use the same room. Sometimes they have one that meets on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and another that meets Tuesday, Thursday. So those are all there. And again, same thing. They're not on right now because it's nighttime and nobody's there. It's the weekend. But come Monday morning, you'll be able to see what's going on there. There are more House committees than Senate committees because the House is bigger. Lincoln Auditorium, there's not usually something there, but if there is, you can watch it there. Idaho Freedom Foundation hosts Capitol Clarity there. They just announced today that Theo Wold, former Solicitor General and former advisor to President Trump, is going to be speaking. He's got a lot of knowledge and a great perspective on things, so he'll be there next Thursday at noon. And of course, at the bottom is JFAC, the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, which is the budget setting committee. So this is a fun resource. Things I put on the website are things that I want to use. So this is helpful for me because I'll just put this up on my other screen when I'm at home, and I'll turn on the ones, sometimes I'll turn on multiple committees when they're meeting at the same time and mute all but one. Or sometimes I'll even have two playing at once if I want to, hear what they're both saying. I'll try to parse that. But it's very helpful for me, so I figured, hey, it might be helpful for others as well. So that is there, linked from the top of the Gem State Chronicle. Go to gemstatechronicle.com, bookmark it. It's got a lot of great resources. If you want to get every article that I write in your email box once a day, then there's a subscribe button here, and that just takes you over to Substack, which is the subscription platform I use. You can see the articles there on Substack as well, but you go ahead and subscribe. You can subscribe for free and get every article in your email box each day. You can also support me there as well. I've been flattered, really impressed with the outpouring of support over the last couple of years, a couple of months, even just the last couple of days. People keep telling me that this is a great resource, and they encourage me to continue doing this. So in order to help me continue doing this, if you want to see more content that I produce, then go ahead and maybe think about supporting me, because then I will be able to keep doing this. So let's see, a couple of things. Let me go over the articles I wrote this week. There we go. On Monday, it was announced that Dr. Marlene Tromp, the president of Boise State University, was interviewing for the job over at University of Vermont. So I wrote about that and explained what's going to happen should she be hired by Vermont, which yesterday it was announced that she was. So Marlene Tromp will be headed out, and now it's up to the State Board of Education, which is these 8 people. 7 of them are appointed by the governor. One of them is our state superintendent, so Debbie Critchfield is elected by the voters. There have been efforts to reform that, to change that, to make it so that some or all of the other state board positions are elected by the voters, perhaps by district. But so far, that's not changed. So that is the board. These are the 8 people who will be interviewing candidates and will be selecting a candidate to be president of our biggest university. And it is an important position. We saw, under Dr. Marlene Tromp's leadership, they embraced diversity, equity, inclusion. They lost a court case in which Sarah Fendley, owner of Big City Coffee, claimed that she was pushed out essentially because of DEI. You had a lot of radical student groups who had been coddled and groomed to be activists, and they came on there and saw that Sarah Fendley supported the police, and so they protested and they put pressure on the university, and the university caved. So that's definitely a black mark on her record. A couple of years ago, the legislature struck out, and decreased BSU's budget because they were pushing that DEI nonsense. Obviously, this year, the state board has said no more DEI, and so they're removing some stuff, changing some names. Bills addressing DEI are still waiting in committee. So in any case, at the bottom, I have a call to action. I suggest writing to the State Board of Education. I've got an email link there. It's just board@edu.idaho.gov. Just write and ask them to select a new president that reflects the values of Idaho. Now, that's the problem. We have these colleges in Boise and Moscow and Idaho Falls that the leadership of these schools do not reflect the values of our state. We have these big cities where they don't reflect the values of the state as a whole. We're a very red state. We're a very conservative state in many ways. And yet we have these big cities and big universities, big colleges where they are decidedly not conservative, very progressive. One might even say Marxist in some ways. So send the board a very respectful email asking them to select a candidate that reflects our values. Let's see, what was next? I wrote 2 articles about moving rules into statute, which has been a big thing this year. So there's really 2 sets of laws in Idaho. Let me pull this up so I can emphasize with my hands here. There's what happened? There we go. Okay. There's 2 sets of laws in Idaho. There's your laws made by your legislature, your elected representatives, the people charged under our Constitution with having the power to create law. And those are statutes. That's the Idaho Code. And then you have another set, which are rules. And you know what? I'm going to get to this here in a moment because I see I've got a guest. Representative Kyle Harris is joining us. Wasn't sure what time he was going to come on, so glad to see him here. Let's bring him on and talk about what's going on from his perspective. There we go, Representative Harris. How are you?
I'm good, Brian. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. It's been a couple of busy weeks. I'm sure even more so for you.
It's been interesting.
Well, before we get into specifics, just what's it been like? As a freshman legislator coming in, not having been here before, and now you're, thrown into the game.
Honestly, it's actually been a lot of fun. It's been a good learning experience. Made some good relationships with some people there that I trust and work well with. There's some really good mentorship going on. You come down there thinking the problem and how you're going to fix it, and then you get there and realize it's 10 times worse and 10 times bigger than you thought it was. So I'm slowly figuring out the process on who to talk to, how to get things moving, and just kind of working my way through the system, coming up with good ideas and trying to help as much as I can.
Well, speaking of good ideas, you had a bill that you presented on the House floor today. Was that your first that you carried on the House floor, or did you do any more?
No, I had another bill, House Bill 214, which dealt with electrical supervision with journeyman and apprenticeships.
Gotcha.
I ran that bill trying to help out some people up here in the northern part of the state where there's not much of a union stranglehold. And it ended up running into some issues, and I got humbled pretty quick on the bill process and the steps. And I got it over to the Senate, and it crashed and burned. But no, today was a good bill. It's not a bill I wrote. It was a bill that was given to me and asked if I would run it. And I said, absolutely, I'd be happy to run that bill, because right now there's no accountability mechanism for any of this funding. We're spending all this money, and we have the Division of Auditing that's doing these audits on these huge administrative budgets and things like that. But when they fail or they're found out of compliance, there's no accountability. And so that's what this bill does, is it gives that accountability to JFAC to say, if you guys take this money and we earmarked it specifically for this and you misuse that money, you have to pay it back. And if you don't, we're going to take it straight out of your budget.
Yeah, so the bill you carried was House Bill 416. It is literally 2 paragraphs.
Yep.
Really, and one of them just the emergency clause, which almost every bill has. So it's really just one paragraph. It says that if the state, the legislature appropriates money for a purpose, then it has to be used for that purpose. You'd think that's common sense, but it's apparently not.
You would think a lot of things would be common sense, but in that building, it's not.
Yeah, it was an interesting debate that I was able to watch most of it today.
Yeah.
What was it like getting up and first presenting it and then answering questions and listening as everybody, some people were really hammering the bill pretty hard. What's not to go all, sideline sports reporter, but what do you feel like during that moment?
Usually I get pretty nervous. Lately I've been getting a lot more comfortable, and you've seen me kind of get up and debate more bills as the sessions got further and further into the session. But a bill like that, I figured might have a small amount of pushback because, it went through committee pretty easy. There was testimony against it, but a lot of that testimony was because people weren't understanding. They thought we were creating a whole new audit and that it was going to be this big burden. And it doesn't do that. It just uses the existing audit system that we have in place now. And so I figured I'd hit some of that and have some of those hiccups. I knew Representative Horman was going to be coming in behind me to help support that bill, which was very helpful because, that's her world in JFAC. She's very intelligent and well-spoken and level-headed and can handle a lot of that stuff. But when you hear things about, there's no trigger, I don't like it because there's no trigger that says when they do this. It doesn't need a trigger because we've already allocated the money for a specific reason, and the schools know it's for a specific reason. And they know if they're not using it for that specific reason, that's the trigger right there. And so it blows my mind when you see people preach accountability, transparency, and then you give them the most simplistic bill of the session that's all about transparency and accountability, and all of a sudden they have a problem with it.
Now, I haven't gone back and checked, but I'll bet there's some overlap on the folks who were opposed to 416. but also opposed the school choice tax credit because they were worried about accountability.
Sure, right? How do we know where this money's going? Well, now you do, because my bill does it.
Are you going to be presenting it in a Senate committee?
I'm hoping. It's so late in the session. Rumor is we're winding down next week,
Hmm.
maybe week and a half. I don't know. I'm not plugged in that deep in leadership and how things are going, but that's the rumor on the street. So we'll see. I'd love to get it through the Senate and get it punched through, but if not, I'll bring it back next year.
Do you have some folks in the Senate you've talked to about carrying it?
Yes, Senator Carlson said she'd carry it for me. My
great.
senator, she's very involved with the educational stuff, and she's looking forward to carrying that bill. So.
Cool. Well, if anybody who's watching this wants to help, just maybe send a polite email to the Senate Education Committee and chair.
Yeah, for
Senator
sure. It'd be a good bill to get through.
Yeah, it's accountability, transparency. I feel like those are some of the themes this year. In addition to tax cuts and things, it's a lot of transparency, a lot of all that moving rules into statute. It's trying to make it more transparent for the people of Idaho, and then things like this to make sure we know where our money's going.
Yeah, I really appreciate the move to move rules to statute. I think it's a great idea. I wish people were paying more attention to the rules that they're actually putting into statute, because now some of the rules aren't that great, and so we're going to have to go back and address some of it. It's similar to what happened when the legislator last year adopted the 23 electrical code into statute, so they wouldn't have to keep going through the rules process. The problem is the 23 code is like the worst code they ever made.
Oh no!
It's the most restrictive, most overburdensome, and if they would have just stuck with 17, we'd have no more electrical issues. And so that's what I'm running into when I see some of these things, with health and welfare, some of their rules that are moving through. There's some verbiage in those rules. It's just terrible. And we're, even when we're taking a section of code and moving it to a different section of code, that all now becomes new code. And so instead of just copying and pasting, we should be getting rid of the parts we don't like in that. And we're not doing it. And so it's frustrating, because you want to change as much as you can, but you can only be so many places. You can only be on so many committees. You can only read so much, right? So I read everything that comes to me. I read every single bill. I read everything in committee, and I can't plug into all of it. And so I wish we could do more, but we are doing a lot. This session's been a great session. A lot of the veterans are like, wow, the things we're doing are crazy. It's never been like this in the 12 years they've been there. And so it's, I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of the process. I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, it seems like a fun time to be there. It's a couple some previous sessions. It looks like it's been very frustrating for conservatives who are trying to get things done. And now this one, it's obviously it's not perfect, but you are getting things done.
Yeah. I mean, we killed 2 budgets yesterday. What are the odds?
that was fun to watch. And there was another budget yesterday, and then one today that it looked like it was going to die, and then a few people changed it right at the last minute.
Yeah. It would have been 3 yesterday, but there was a couple people that switched at the end. We would have had that one today, but a couple people switched at the end. And so that's the fun part, is watching kind of who's doing what, watching the board. We got a lot of budgets coming still, and I think there's a good chance we're going to kill a lot of these enhancement budgets.
Yeah. It's people want to go home, so the incentive is to just pass it and forget about it. But this is really where you got to knuckle down and really do your due diligence. And if it's bad, kill it, send it back.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to save people taxes, this is where you do it. Kill the budgets, shrink the budgets. We're not, we had that one budget yesterday where we took $130,000 out of it. And I was talking to Representative Shepard about it, and he's like, 5 years I've been here, we've never cut a maintenance budget. Like, this is the first time. And so that, it's good to hear that. JFAC has been putting in a ton of work this year, and it shows. We're getting down to the nitty gritty, and we're making cuts where we can, and all we can do is just go forward from here.
So when you're down there on the floor and talking about those budgets, those bills where it looks like it's going to fail, then it passes, or vice versa, do the people down there talk about it? Do they say, "Oh, I'm going to vote for this, but I might change"? Or do you hear things down there?
I sit in the front row, so I kind of don't hear anything. Everybody's behind me. So, you'll get a vote that's done, and then, your phone might ring. Hey, we noticed you were a no on that. Is there something we missed or something along those lines? I'm sure there's conversations happening around. It's just funny to me to watch people because like I go in there, I know exactly how I'm voting on everything because I've read everything. My mind is made up when I sit down. I've got it all written out. I'm ready to go. But you see the people that just kind of follow the board and they'll make a vote and then you'll see them change their vote or they'll hang and wait for them to see what the board's doing and then they'll make their vote. And it's unfortunate that happens because people should be doing the work and making their own decision. That's what they were elected to do, is go down there and have a voice, not follow a group of people. And but I think everybody's doing the best they can, and it's been fun.
Yeah, the one thing that I keep coming back to that's really fascinating to me is that all 105 people in there, no matter how much I agree or disagree or like or dislike, every single one was elected by their voters to be there, and they are representing their voters, and those are the people that they're accountable to in the end. It doesn't matter what I think; it matters what your voters think.
Sure.
And that it makes you a part of a pretty exclusive club, but at the same time, it's obviously you got to remember why you're there.
Yeah, and that's I think everybody's doing what they think is right, and I can't fault anybody for that because if that's what they believe in, that's what they believe in. I went down there to hold people accountable, and that's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm running the bill I'm running today, and I've got like 6 more bills sitting in my desk for next year as soon as it starts. Unfortunately for me, not knowing the process, I wasn't ready in January to just start whipping legislation out. A lot of these people have been working on stuff for the last year and over the summer getting these things all ready. So when January 6th hit, it was boom. And so I'm ready for that. I've got some big stuff coming next year. It's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited about it. We're going to shake it up a little bit more.
You're making me excited for the next session, and this one's not even done yet.
No, it's close.
So one other thing I wanted to go back to is you mentioned the rules, especially electrical rules, electrical code. Is that something you're looking to address since it's your area of expertise?
Yeah, it is. I've been working with some other electricians down there in the Boise area. That the problem is when the rule process gets called, the only people that can make it are these huge union shops that have 500 employees, 150 employees. Little guys like me, where I've got 1 employee, there's shops up here that might have 4 or 5 employees. They can't break away to come down there and be a part of that process. And so when the rules come, it's these huge, massive electrical shops, and the union are basically controlling the entire industry in the state. And the little guys like myself have no voice. And so now that I'm in a position where I have a voice, I want to use that voice. And, I've been working with the Crane brothers a lot because, they're well respected and experienced and they know the game, and they're helping me out a lot in this process. But there's some things, they actually did a good job on the rules process, and the rules are actually good. There's some minor verbiages that I'd like to change, but when you're doing rules, you have to strike it or pass it. You can't amend it. And so I've got some things coming in statute that are just going to clarify some things to make sure we don't go backwards and get ourselves caught, in 5 years, 2 years, whatever. If I'm not here and there's no electricians looking at this stuff, it's real easy to become more restrictive. And I just don't want to allow that to happen.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I've got a comment there. Every conservative should wait and vote and see how you vote and then vote accordingly. That's probably not a bad idea.
I'll take it.
Well, I have appreciated the work you're putting in here to read every bill and read everything that comes across your committee and across the floor. Not everyone does that. Not everyone has the time or energy to do that. And it's been impressive. I'm sure your voters appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. It's a lot of 15-hour days. You get there at 7 a.m. I leave there at 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock, and I get locked in the garage all the time. I have to call security to open the gate. But but a lot of times it's not just me. There's other legislators that are there just as late as I am, and we're working together, reading bills and bouncing the ideas off. What do you think this means? How are you reading this? How does that interpret to you? And I've been working with Dale Hawkins and Lane Price and Cornell Razor and those people that I truly respect, and they read legislation just as good as I do, if not better. And so we get together and we really hash out what our thoughts are, and that's where we come to the votes that we make.
Well, it's like you said, it's been a good session so far, and Now you've got me excited for the next session to see what you're going to bring. I want to let you go since you've got your family time here. It's been a busy
Sure.
week. Is there anything else you wanted to cover while you're here, or anywhere people can follow you?
I did just get an X account. I've been putting it off forever. I didn't want to go down that hole and succumb to the X world. But it's just Kyle Harris 1234 on X. I get a lot of posts from the Idaho Freedom Foundation or Idaho Freedom Caucus, because I'm a member of them. So you can see some of my stuff on the Idaho Freedom Caucus page, and then I got my own little thing there. But it's been fun. I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more and kind of hashing out some of the things that are happening at the Capitol. I'm looking forward to working with people I've been working with to get some really good legislation coming. We've got a big list compiled of all the things that the Idaho Freedom Caucus has got done or co-sponsored or been a part of this session. And so just keep your eyes out. We got a lot of things coming. We're working in the background to try to get some things moving in the right direction in some other areas. And we're planning on doing some big things.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time tonight. Thanks for what you're doing, and have a good weekend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's let me move that out of the way. That's Representative Kyle Harris up in District 7. Remember that if you go to, I was looking at the bill he had there, but if you go to Idaho Insider, you can learn all about each legislator. And what I've actually been trying to make a habit of, whenever I mention a legislator in an article, I link to their profile page on Idaho Insider. So you go over District 7, Seat A, articles he's been in. Obviously, scorecards from last year, but he is a pledge signer of Citizens Alliance of Idaho on the Business, Education, Transportation, and Defense committees. I'll have to add his new X account there at some point soon. And you can see the, interestingly, District 7 actually borders my district, District 14, right here at the very top. It's a very, very large, geographically large district, which is always interesting. Down here in the Treasure Valley, they're pretty small, just a couple of square miles. But you've got to represent a lot of people over a lot of distance. That's Montana to Oregon there in Washington. So appreciate Representative Harris for coming on. And since he was just here, I want to cover a little bit about his bill this morning. That was the subject of today's article over at gemstatechronicle.com. I framed the article as looking for the no, and because it's something I've been noticing all session, that legislators, whether they're Democrats or moderate Republicans or whatever, they try to find a reason to vote against a bill they don't like, and it's not necessarily the reason they say it is. They have to find a reason that sounds good, that rationalizes a decision they've already made. And so that was my framing there, because you saw that during this debate where Representative Harris presented this bill and Representative Wendy Horman, the co-chair of JFAT, got up and supported it. But you had, I picked out 5 of them here. Representatives McCann, Erickson, Raybould, Nelson, and Church, each of whom debated against the bill. And their reasonings for debating against it were all interesting. Representative McCann said, it's not fair that this bill just targets public schools, that it should target all state agencies. And I forget who it was who got up and said that the good representative could perhaps run her own bill to target other agencies. But that's a good point. Why would you vote against this bill if you think that it's doing a good thing? It's just not applying to everything. Representative Erickson, he was talking about how schools have a margin of error because you're trying to take these funds you've been allocated and put them and plug them into where they belong, but sometimes it doesn't quite match. Representative Raybould said it was missing an enforcement clause, which, as Representative Harris just said, that wasn't the point. It's already having audits. This just gives JFAC the authority to pull it back. Representative Nelson, actually, I'll give Representative Nelson credit. He pretty much came out and said what he really thought here, that the legislature shouldn't micromanage schools, that they should just spend the money how they need to. And, I disagree there. If it's been appropriated for a specific purpose, it's been appropriated for a specific purpose. But at least he was, kind of straightforward there. Representative Monica Church, she's a Democrat, and she made an interesting argument saying that essentially that the schools don't have the right software to do this properly. They don't have QuickBooks, I think was the example she used. And, maybe that's the case, but if that is the case, then they need to get that fixed now, because being accountable for taxpayer dollars is one of the basic functions of any government agency. If the legislature says, here's a chunk of money, you can't actually see me, can you? There we go. I was talking with my hands, and if you can't see me, then what's the point? So the legislature says, here's a chunk of money, and this part is for maintenance, and this part is for teacher salaries, and this part is for equipment, whatever. And then the school just takes it all, puts it in a big pot, and says, we're going to spend it however we see fit. Then what's the point of the legislature? What's the point of legislative intent? We really saw this a couple of years ago, and I keep going back to this. How there was a federal grant, $6 million, that the legislature was going to appropriate to a nonprofit in the Treasure Valley that does stuff with children. And after learning that this nonprofit was pretty left wing, pretty progressive, pretty woke, legislators pushed back, and they ended up they killed the first bill, and then they came back with another bill, and they ended up passing it in such a way as to say that you can only use this for K-12 services. Well, it went to Department of Health and Welfare to distribute the money to this charity and other charities, and the folks in Health and Welfare basically said, we're just going to do what we want. We're going to give it to them for pre-K, even though the legislature explicitly told them not to. And that was Senator Glenita Zeiderfeld was the one who really blew the whistle on that a couple of years ago. And they were audited, and there was tons of findings, and there was controversy because the Attorney General was investigating, and they were saying he shouldn't be allowed to investigate state agencies. But really, I mean, that's his job is to represent the people of Idaho. So that this thing does happen where agencies take money and put it where where it shouldn't go, and just ignore the legislature. So Representative Harris's bill here, if you want to see it, this is the statement of purpose. Every bill has the SOP, the statement of purpose. It's just the legislator is writing, okay, this is what the bill does. It's not actually part of the bill. If when it becomes law, this is not part of the law. And then fiscal note is how it's going to affect the budget. But if you read the actual text of it, it's literally one paragraph. Any funds distributed by the state Department of Education to school districts or public charter schools that are specifically identified in statute or in an appropriation bill as intended for a certain purpose shall be used only for such purpose. Any funds intended for a certain purpose but used for another purpose shall be reimbursed to the state by the school district or public charter school and deposited to the state general fund. If the school district or public charter school fails to make such reimbursement, an amount equivalent to the misused funds shall be deducted from the state's next payment to the school district or public charter school pursuant to this chapter or Chapter 52, Title 33, Idaho Code. Very basic. So yeah, there is a trigger mechanism there. If they fail an existing audit and it shows they're not using the money as they should, then they have to give that money back. So fantastic bill. Thank you, Representative Harris, for carrying it. A couple other things on my outline here. Let's see what else is going on. I was talking about the moving the rules to statute. Go ahead and read the article. It's a pretty in-depth idea. But what I was saying before Representative Harris came on is that there's two sets, and he mentioned this. With like the electrical code. The electrical code is not in statute, or at least not yet. It's been rules that have been developed by an oversight board of the state government. And those rules are approved by the legislature, but they're not part of the legislature. So if you go, let's see, where's a link here? Let's look at some stuff here. So Chapter 52 of Title 67 is the Idaho Administrative Procedure Act, IDAPA, IDAPA. And this lays out how these rules are made. And it's long and complicated. But this isn't actually the rules. This is just the law that explains how rules are made. You go back and find a link from my page. There we go. IDAPA. So this is the rules on immunizations required for daycares. And you notice it's 160211. There's tons of these rules. You can actually go to the root website here, adminrules.idaho.gov, and read all of them. It's kind of clunky to go through. Complete cumulative index by IDAPA, and you got to go find the actual board. So if you want to see the Barley Commission rules, this looks like the archive of it, but still, There's a lot of rules. That's the point I'm getting to. I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit trail. There's a lot of rules, no matter what industry you're in. Licensure rules, and like you said, electrical code. If you do electrical work, it has to follow certain standards, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to know. And once a rule's in place, it's very hard to change, and that's what the point of this is. There are some conservatives who are pushing back and saying that it's better to keep things in rules rather than in statute because only one chamber is necessary to reject a rule, and that's technically true. When a new rule is promulgated, both chambers have to adopt the rule by concurrent resolution. It used to be just one had to adopt it. Which was very bad because the agency that wanted to do the rule could figure out which committee, the House committee or the Senate committee was more amenable to their rule and just go there. But it was actually last year that leadership changed the rules, changed the law to make it so it has to pass both sides. So, if say Department of Health and Welfare wants to change a rule, they bring the rule to the Health and Welfare Committee on the Senate side, and then the Health and Welfare Committee on the House side. It goes one way or the other, and it has to be passed by both chambers, which means, logically, if one chamber, even if one committee rejects it, then that rule is rejected. That new rule is not adopted. However, once rules have been adopted, in future years, it's more difficult to remove them because you can only remove them by concurrent resolution. So if you've got a rule that's already in place that was adopted last year or 10 years ago, if you want to reject it, you need to draft a law eliminating it, draft a resolution eliminating it, and get a hearing with a committee chair and get it through that committee and then get it through the House and then or the floor, get it to the other side, to the Senate in this case, get it through their committee and get it through the Senate floor. And then that can eliminate an existing rule. And they actually did that yesterday. It is difficult, but it's not impossible. The Senate did reject an existing rule. Still has to go to the House side. So it's not done yet. But yeah, that moving it to statute though makes it easier because you can just, propose a law the same, propose a bill the same way as you do anyway. The other thing about rules is that when you reject them, you're only rejecting them in whole. Basically, every enumerated section, whether it's 1 or A or B or whatever, you can reject the whole thing. You can't amend them. You can't, people in the committee can't look at a rule and say, well, I don't like the wording of this. I want to change it a little bit. Can't do that. You can either accept it or reject it. Whereas if it's in statute, you can amend it. And that is a huge thing. So it's a complicated issue. I've learned a lot about it. Go read that 2 articles last week, Take Back the Power, Moving Rules to Statute. This one's really about the theoretical side of it. And then the Moving Rules to Statute article with the picture of Senator Lenny there is more about the practical side of how it's working out. One of the rules that was moved to statute this year was newborn blood screenings, which again was already in rules, but people got a little freaked out when they saw a bill saying that newborns had to have certain blood screenings and have that goop put in their eyes, some antibiotic goop. And people were thinking, oh, this is new. They're trying to put in these new requirements, but no, it was already there. We're just moving it over from rules to statute, and there was already an opt-out. Parents don't actually have to do that. They can just say no. Sometimes new parents might feel pressured to do it, but they can say no. When we had all of our children, we did not do the eye goop. We didn't feel it was necessary. So that's always been there. However, to calm people's fears and to clarify that parents are not required, Senator Camille Blaylock introduced a new bill that coming in behind. So it's a trailer bill. It comes in behind another bill to amend it a bit. So as these rules are moved into statute, this trailer bill comes by and amends those new statutory rules to make it so that make it more clear that you can opt out of these requirements. So that was good. Also, Thursday, like Representative Harris said, the House killed a couple of budget bills, and I talked about how that process worked. Here, if you want to watch this is kind of fun. We'll see if the audio works too, by the way. This was the vote on House Bill 391, which was one of the appropriations bills that was failing until one representative switched.
Debate is closed. Question issue, House Bill 391 passed the House. Clerk will mark the machine. Members will cast their votes.
Just remember, how representatives push a button on their phone, red or green, no or yes. Now watch this. It's losing. A tie vote loses.
Has every member voted? Who am I missing? Does any members change their vote?
Up and there, Representative Stephanie Mickelson flipped from
Clerk will lock the
red to
machine.
green.
Record the roll.
Representative Monk switched from red to green back to red again.
35
So,
ayes, 3 nay, 2 absent and excused. Majority having voted in favor of House Bill 391. House Bill 391 is passed the House. Is there correction to title?
No correction to title.
Hearing none, the title is approved. Bill will be transferred to the Senate.
so there you go. That was that. But they did go on to kill 2 more bills, and I wrote about that. It's always funny to see the random thumbnails that YouTube chooses out of the video. It just picks a random frame from the video. So you got Representative Levitt there looking very intense. He debated against House Senate Bill 1160, which was an appropriations bill for behavioral services in Department of Health and Welfare. He was actually the only one to actually debate against it, but it was persuasive because that bill failed. And then Senate Bill 1165 failed as well. Senate Bill 1108 was an interesting one. Some folks debated against it because it's essentially the Medicaid budget, $5 billion, our biggest single budget in the entire state. However, Representative Tanner, my representative here in 14, I feel like he did a pretty good job bringing it down from last year. It's actually down 3%, which it's still a huge number. But what he and Representative Horman pointed out is that the budgets reflect policy. And that's why you can cut spending to an extent, but it's very hard to just zero out something because that would be JFAC essentially going against the policy of the legislature. You want to kill some of these things. We need the legislature to really grow some teeth and go in there and start canceling state agencies. That would be great. Anyway, I quote this article from Fred Birnbaum, Idaho Freedom Foundation, where he talks about voting down these enhancement budgets on the House floor is a good thing. And I totally agree with him. Lists off some of the agencies that didn't even bother making enhancement budgets. They found last year's budget, the maintenance budget, sufficient. It's not quite just exactly last year's budget because they do have certain increases in there, change in employee compensation and such. Anyway, so go check out my article. Follow the link to Fred's article. Good stuff. And then, of course, today, I already told you about this, talking about Representative Harris's a bill and how people are looking for excuses not to support it. So let's see, where am I? Another thing I want to show you over here. So people are always asking where a bill is in the process. And obviously, you can go to the list of bills and you can see what's going on. You actually see it over here. This 416, it's passed the House. So this is always whatever you see in this column over here is the most recent thing that happened. So the most recent thing that happened to House Bill 416 is it passed the House. That means it's not in a Senate committee yet. It's not had its first reading in the Senate. Monday it will. It'll have its first reading in the Senate. It will be assigned to a Senate committee, and it'll say, Senate Education. And you see that here. House Bill 410 passed the House and is now in Senate Education. So that's one way. But once it's to governor, let's see if I can find one that's to gov. Oh, goodness. There you go. There's 3 of them right there. There's 3 bills. Another one right there that's to gov. Now, what does that mean? That means it has been delivered to the governor. Statutorily, constitutionally, once a bill has been set on the governor's desk, delivered to the governor, he has 5 days, not counting Sunday, to sign the bill or veto it. If he signs it, it becomes law. If he vetoes it, it goes back to the chamber it originated in, and they have an opportunity to try and override the veto with a 2/3 vote. If they succeed, then the other chamber has to also have a 2/3 vote. There's one more thing he can do. He can let a bill become law without his signature. If the governor does nothing, if he doesn't sign it or doesn't veto it, and it passes that 5-day deadline, it becomes law without his signature, which is interesting. So if you ever want to actually see what the status of all these is, you come over to the governor's website. This is Office of the Governor, and he's got this page called the 2025 Legislative Session. And this is everything having to do with the session. So down here you have news releases. Sometimes he puts out press releases based on certain bills that he signed, or House Bill 93, creating the parental choice tax credit program. I mean, school choice is popular, so he's taking credit for it. I'm just glad he signed it. Launch Grant doing great. Obviously, he's a big fan of that. That was been his signature program for the past few years, so he's going to continue promoting that. Signs the Medicare Reform Act. Anyway, and then up here you have the text of his State of the State address. But the important thing here is the governor's daily bill action. It's a spreadsheet, so it shows you each bill, the time it was delivered to his office, and the date. And that time is important because it's, according to the Constitution, it's exactly 5 days, not counting Sundays. So if it goes 1 minute over, then it becomes law without a signature. So it's got the time there. And then the due date is when he has to take action. And the due time is the exact same time on that 5th day. And then over here in the final 3, you have the action. What did he do with it? And in this case, House Bill 3, he signed it. It was signed on the 27th of January at 2:55 p.m. So he signed that well before the deadline. Some of those, like excuse me. Where is the school choice bill? That was 93. You can just do Control F and search for it here. There it is, House Bill 93. It was due on the 27th, and he signed it on the 27th. He signed it about 3.5 hours before the deadline. So the governor, I will say, does have a flair for the dramatic, and sometimes on the controversial bills, he'll just let it sit there and let people call his office and leave messages and voicemails, have the news talk about it, and it keeps people guessing, and it keeps him on everybody's minds, which I guess is a good thing if you're a politician. As you get, he's signed a lot of bills so far. There's been no vetoes yet this year. I imagine his veto finger is a little bit itchy. I feel like he wants to veto at least one bill every year. But you get to the bottom, you start seeing gaps. So Senate Bill 1045 was delivered on the 18th at 4:10 p.m. That means it is due on Monday at 4:10 p.m. And we'll see what he does with that. Senate Bill 1023 is the Medical Freedom Act, which there's been some controversy over that because Representative McCann accidentally did a reply all saying that she wants to kill the bill. She wants the governor to veto it, and she thinks the governor doesn't like the bill. If you're looking for that, it's not here yet. And actually, if you go back to the legislation, we're looking for Senate Bill 1023, medical freedom. The last thing that happened is it's received from the Senate, signed by the Speaker, received from the Senate to the House, signed by the Speaker, returned to Senate. So it's been signed by the Speaker of the House. It's awaiting the signature of the President of the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor, at which point it will be delivered to the governor's desk. So there's a process to these things. It has to check all the boxes. So that one has not yet hit the governor's desk. It probably will Monday or even Tuesday, at which point you'll have another 5 days after that. And being a controversial bill, he's probably going to do the same thing and let people stew over it. So speaking of Governor Little, I've been saving this all week. I got a fundraising letter from the governor in my mailbox. I've gotten a few of these over the years. If you'll recall, if you go back to the Gem State Chronicle from a couple of years ago, I wrote some articles connecting the governor's PAC to the Idaho Liberty PAC, which was a PAC that was put together to go after some conservative senators. They sent out door knockers and dropped mailers against Senator Tammy Nichols, Senator Chris Trakel, and Senator Brian Lenny, all out in Canyon County. And Senator Trakel obviously lost his primary and he's out, but Senators Lenny and Nichols, they survived and they are back and stronger than ever. But that was interesting because, in the previous fundraiser that he sent, he said he needed to raise money to fight the Biden administration. He needed to fight the Democrats. And then that money's getting funneled into this other PAC that's not going after Democrats or not going after Biden. It's going after conservative senators. So I kept this all week so that I can open it live with you on the air right now. This is a big moment. So let's open the governor's fundraising letter and see what he has to say. So having some fun here. All right. There we go. A lot of papers here. There you go. Cover up my address there. It's a nice letter. It's always nice to get a letter from your governor, right? Dear Brian, America made a choice this past November, and you were part of it. When America voted for President Donald J. Trump, it voted for the promise of a change from the broken status quo of Washington, D.C. Open borders, out-of-control spending, inflation, and runaway crime. America demanded better because America deserves better. And I'm proud to tell you, the best version of America looks an awful lot like Idaho. That sounds an awful lot like Citizens Alliance. Idaho is what America was. Anyway, Back to the letter. As Idaho's governor, I'm writing to humbly ask you to stand up proudly in support of that vision for America's future. Today, we need to see this change through and make sure we never go back again. Last year, President Trump and Republicans like me talked a lot about the promise of a better future, a future that looks less like California and more like Idaho. And he's hitting all the notes here. Jumping on the Trump train, going along with Trump's coattails, and also contrasting Idaho and California. California is definitely not a popular place, and people from California are definitely face suspicion here. Back here. Today, we're fighting to keep that promise for the people who voted for it. Idaho has what the rest of the country desperately needs: safe communities, a bustling economy, rising incomes, a real tax relief that puts more money in your wallets, fewer regulations, fiscal responsibility from government, and common sense family-supporting values. So that's all very, very vague, but it sounds nice. That's a promise worth fighting for today and generations to come. I've said from day one as your governor, my promise is to make Idaho the place where our children and grandchildren want to stay, the place who leave want to come home to. Today, I'm asking you to help keep that promise. With several weeks to go until we wrap up our legislative session in Boise, we must show strength as I continue to push through a conservative agenda that's rooted in limited government, economic growth, and keeping our promises to the taxpayers, small businesses, and farmers of Idaho. Of course, there's nothing about cutting spending there, because not going to do that. Brian, I'm asking you to join this fight today by signing your name to the enclosed 2025 Statement of Support and returning it to me along with your most generous message sending support of $35, $50, $100, $250, $500, or $1,000 to help us keep our promise and win in all 44 counties in Idaho. I'm not sure quite what he means by win in all 44 counties. Is he raising money for his re-election next year? Maybe. This is obviously going to a PAC. Anyway, back to the letter. I want to share with you the secret to winning re-election. Oh, well, I guess there you go. Is that an official announcement, Governor Little? Are you indeed running for re-election in 2026? No, that's what it says right there. It's something I've believed in for years, and something that President Trump's own success in Washington is going to fully depend on. It's the reason the liberals, those liberals, man, are so desperate to stop Trump from achieving the things he talked about on the campaign trail. It's this simple: promises made, promises kept. Here in Idaho, that means delivering on the things that we say we're going to do, listening to the people, what the people of Idaho tell us, and protecting what makes our state so great in the first place. He's got some bullet points here. First is tax relief. I'm proposing hundreds of millions more on top of the $4.6 billion we've already put back in people's wallets. It's interesting that he says hundreds of million. That's hundreds, plural, with an S. Remember, in a State of the State, he called for $100 million in tax relief. And when Speaker Moyle and Representative Tanner came out and said, no, we want 400 million, the governor was quoted in some news articles saying he wasn't so sure about that, not sure we can afford it. But now, of course, he's going to take credit for it, because that's what you do when you're in the position of governor. It works because of balanced budgets, fiscal responsibility, and it's amazing to compare our success to California's billion-dollar deficits and tax hikes. Secure borders and safe communities. The Idaho State Police just wrapped up their 4th deployment to the border, where they intercepted fentanyl and drug dealers crossing Biden's open border. No other state has completed more missions to border states. I'm proud to announce that we've reduced crime in Idaho by 17% since I took office, with violent crime at a 5-year low. That's nice. Farmers in rural Idaho, we're making sure farmers have the water they need to keep Idaho families fed. We're fighting back against DC's failures to put out wildfires more aggressively. Housing, we're killing needless government regulations that get between families and new homes, because the next generation isn't going to stay in Idaho if they can't afford to live here. Of course, the governor had a low-income or an affordable housing, workforce housing proposal that he wanted to spend a bunch of taxpayer money on, but JFAC killed it, and I'm sure he was pretty grumpy about that. But yeah, that's always the thing. If you're just a normal person who doesn't pay attention to politics, you get this and think, oh yeah, this is all great stuff, and so you're primed to, maybe give the governor's PAC some money and obviously vote for the governor for re-election. If you're in the know, it can be frustrating, because that most of what he's taking credit for is actually stuff the legislature did. And that's just the way it works. People don't really understand the separation of powers in our government. It's just, the governor's the boss, and he's responsible for everything good that happens. When in reality, oftentimes the legislature has to fight him tooth and nail to get done what they want to get done. Like with tax cuts, for example. But that's the way it works. So I don't know. Maybe if you're watching this, I'm helping you peel back the curtain just a little bit. That's how Idaho keeps its promises. That's how I'm keeping mine. I hope you'll join me in this battle for our country's future. With President Trump back in the White House, there's no doubt we have the momentum now. However, the Democrats in Washington, D.C. and even Boise will try to stop us at any cost. Please, Brian, please Sign your name to the enclosed statement of support and join this fight with the most generous promise-keeping support of $35, $50, $100, $150, $500, $1,000, or even $5,000 to help us keep our promise and keep Idaho strong. Sincerely, Governor Brad Little. P.S. And there's always a P.S. I learned this working for Idaho Freedom Foundation, helping write some of these fundraising letters. There's a structure to them. There's a schema that you fill out. You come in, you talk about first you talk about the donor, the potential donor, how awesome you are, and that's what it is. Yeah, it's talking about Trump, and then talking about how you helped make that happen, and we're never going to go back, and then talk about the great things you've done. And then you start asking for money. You ask for money twice, once on the front page, once on the back, and then you do a little PS. So, PS: President Trump is fighting for our country, and I'm fighting for Idaho. It's going to take people like you to stand with me and President Trump as we fight against the corrupt, failed direction that the Democrats want to keep us going in. Oh, it's a third ask. That's pretty bold. There's 3 asks in this one. Please sign the enclosed statement of support to join this fight with the most generous support of $35, $50, $100, $250, $500, $1,000, or more to help us keep our promise and keep Idaho strong. Thanks, Brad. Well, that's very sweet. He's on a first name basis with me. Paid for by Brad Little for governor, Vicky Risch treasurer. So this is not a PAC. I was wrong at the beginning because this is not the governor's PAC, which is some previous fundraising letters have been. This is the governor's campaign. And if the governor is sending out campaign letters, fundraising letters here in March of 2025 with the Republican primary in May of 2026, it's a pretty strong indication that he's going to run again, isn't it? I mean, you could always throw a curveball and, support someone else like the lieutenant governor or, someone else running for the office and then, donate the campaign's money to them. Although there are limits to that. So I guess they'd donate it to a PAC. But anyway, but it really seems like he is definitely running for a third term, signing the school choice bill. He knows that's popular, and that's why he did a press conference, a press release, and took credit for it. All the tax cuts, even the ones he fought against, or maybe not fought against, but was not in favor of initially, he's going to take credit for those. So yeah, I think I think we've broken news here. The governor is most likely running for a third term. And of course, there's a little thingy to fill it out and send in money. 2025 statement of support. So this is the thing that he kept talking about. Yes, Governor Little, thank you. Thanks to your leadership, Idaho's leading the way. Should I send things like this out? Say, support the Gem State Chronicle. Say, you viewer, reader, I'm asking you to join the fight today by signing your name to my Gem State Chronicle statement of support, returning it to me along with your most generous message sending support of $35, $50, $100, $250, $500, or $1,000, or even $5,000 or more. You think that would work? You think that would help to support the Chronicle? Maybe I should try it. Anyway, that was fun. Live opening of the governor's fundraising letter. A couple other things going on in the world I want to cover before we say good night. Head back over to the Chronicle here. Where's my window? There's my window. Last week, I did an article on the Brave New Digital World where I talked about the potential digital driver's license bill, and I came out not necessarily in support, just kind of more interested in. Okay, this could be an interesting thing. Let's see how it works out. It ended up getting killed in a Senate committee, so that bill is dead for this year. So there are no digital driver's licenses. For those who are freaked out about it, don't worry, we're safe for another year. But it is something I feel is inevitable. It's just an interesting thing. I wrote about how we evaluate these things. Is it doable? Is it secure? Is it going to lead to tyranny? I think about my phone. I use it for everything, for secure messaging, for paying for gas, paying for groceries, paying at restaurants. Was at a coffee shop this morning and used it to, pay for my Earl Grey tea. So adding a driver's license in there, I don't find that super scary, but I know some people do. It's an interesting thing, and we'll continue the conversation. So I just wanted to update you on that it did fail in the committee, so it is done. There's one more thing I wanted to bring up here. So go back to the bill list this morning in Senate State Affairs. Senator Jim Woodward of District 1, along with his House counterpart, Representative Mark Sauter, introduced a new abortion bill. And it got a little contentious in the hearing, too. So you actually read it, and what they're doing, ever since Idaho banned abortion, because we actually banned abortion before Dobbs. We had the trigger bill that would go into effect if Roe v. Wade was overturned. And then we had the heartbeat bill, which also had to wait until Roe was overturned. Once Roe was overturned with Dobbs versus Women's Health, Jackson Women's Health, those went into effect, and abortion was effectively banned in Idaho. And the response of a lot of the people on the left, and even some in the Republican Party, has been, well, the law is too strict, and it's making it so doctors can't perform emergency medical care on women. I mean, the Biden administration sued us over that, and the Trump administration just got the case dismissed. And they're saying that it's causing physicians to leave and OBGYNs to leave because they can't operate under this environment where they're under the threat of lawsuits if they try to save the mother's life and it causes an abortion, or if they're forced to abort the child. I mean, this is something I think Scott Herndon, former senator, hopefully future senator, who is the counterpart, the opposite to Senator Woodward here up in District 1. He speaks very, very well on the issue of life, in that murder by abortion is not it's not medical care. If there's a mother who's injured or sick, and the doctor is faced with trying to save her life, but in doing so, it's going to cause the death of the unborn baby, that's not abortion. I mean, technically in the dictionary it might be, but that's not murder abortion. That's not elective abortion. That's essentially triage. Say there's two people who are in a car accident, and a doctor gets there and can only save one. I mean, it's a horrible situation, but that's not, you wouldn't say that the doctor murdered the one he wasn't able to save. But that's still the narrative that they've been giving, that all these physicians are leaving because the law is too strict. So Senator Woodward and Representative Sauter brought this bill, and they brought it with the expectation that it would not be actually given a hearing. We're too late in the session, but they want to start this conversation. And this is what it does. So remember, when you read a bill, it says Section 18604 Idaho Code B, and hereby amended to read as follows. So all of this is already in code. This is essentially the Defense of Life Act here. Down here, they're going to add. Underline means add. Strike through means take away. So underline, they say lethal fetal anomaly means a profound and irreversible congenital anomaly, birth defect, or genetic abnormality that's incompatible with sustained life after birth. And apparently, according to the physician, or retired physician who testified this morning, these are technical terms. The term does not include the numerous birth defects, chromosomal abnormalities, or genetic mutations that are compatible with extended survival after birth, such as Down syndrome. Now, that is an issue. Somebody was asking about that in one of the group chats I'm in this morning during that hearing, because you see, babies with Down syndrome are often aborted, even though they are able to survive, and that's a significant moral issue there. Anyway, so that's just adding that lethal fetal anomaly to the definitions. But the real meat of it comes down here in the Defense of Life Act. Subsection B here. So this is, so you got to go up to the top to see what this is referencing. The following shall not be considered criminal abortions for purposes of subsection 1. So this is already in the law. The physician determined in his good faith and medical judgment that abortion was necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman. So they're adding one, a section B. It was performed or attempted by a physician as defined in this chapter, that the abortion was necessary to prevent a serious health risk to the mother. For purposes of this section, serious health risk means a medical condition that, in the absence of medical attention, could reasonably be expected to result in substantial impairment of a major bodily function, including any harm that would render the mother unable to conceive or carry a pregnancy in the future. No abortion shall be deemed necessary to prevent a serious health risk to the pregnant woman because the physician believes that the woman may or will take action to harm herself. Now, that's interesting, because that's something people have worried about. Putting in health exceptions, it creates loopholes. Well, the doctor determines that the woman's mental health will be impacted if she doesn't carry the child to term, or she might be suicidal if she doesn't get an abortion, and so we better do what she wants. Basically a person holding her own self hostage to get what she wants. So it's interesting that they put in the exception there, that doesn't count. Section C. So this is another exception to the criminal abortion rule. The abortion was performed or attempted by a physician as defined in this chapter before the third trimester of pregnancy, and two physicians have certified in writing in such physician's reasonable medical judgment that the fetus was diagnosed with a lethal fetal anomaly, and prior to performing the abortion, the physician informed the woman both verbally and in writing that perinatal hospice and perinatal palliative care services are available as an alternative to abortion. Interesting. So that's referring to if you're in the first or second trimester and you find out that the unborn baby is not likely to survive. Now, those are always interesting. I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I can't speak for it. But it's obviously would be an awful situation. But I've known families who have been in there, and many of them do choose to carry the baby to term, even though they know they'll only have a few hours with the baby. And that's what it talks about their palliative care services. There's one more change. Abortion following detection of a fetal heartbeat is prohibited. So this is the heartbeat law. So there was the trigger law, the Defense of Life Act. This is the heartbeat law. So they're changing that as well in the case of a lethal fetal anomaly pursuant to the sections of 18622. So it's just referring that back to the definitions up there. So interesting. What do you think? What do you think about that idea? Does this still protect life in Idaho? Does this go too far in creating loopholes for allowing abortion in Idaho? Is this necessary to reassure physicians, which is what Senator Woodward and Representative Sauter told us in the hearing this morning? Is this necessary to reassure physicians that they can practice medicine properly and take care of women and babies in Idaho? That's my question to you as we part here. Ponder that. Obviously, if this doesn't get an actual hearing, then this is just something people are going to talk about until next session. And, who knows, might see some action. Also, obviously, the leftist groups are probably going to put some sort of abortion initiative on the ballot to either add exceptions like this or to legalize it entirely. And that will be our next big fight. So I appreciate everyone who joined me tonight. I appreciate Representative Harris for taking the time out of his Friday evening to join me. Remember, if you're not watching this live, you can always catch it on a recording. Go to X. It's on my account right now. It's not actually on I don't think it's on the Gem State Chronicle account. So go to Gem State Brian on Twitter, X. Go to Gem State Chronicle on Facebook. I'll post links on the website. I'll post links on Telegram. Go to YouTube, Gem State Chronicle there. Go to Gem State Chronicle on Rumble. These shows do pretty well on Rumble, actually. So thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a busy week. We'll be back with more on Monday. Good night.